to be here, and it's been really interesting to hear. Before I talk about what we're doing at Cross River, I just wanted to follow on the remarks of CRDF because I actually teach for CRDF under the first program. So first is the foundation, if I get this right, the Foundation for the Responsible Use of SMR Technology, not one of the State Department's best acronyms in the world. But, the first program has taught in places like Ghana and Kenya already. I've had the pleasure of teaching for both, but also Indonesia. And, it's to build awareness for countries interested in developing nuclear power programs. And it's really relevant when we start talking about projects, because if you don't have the program behind it, there's not going to be a project. And, reference was made to all the things that the IAEA does. And when you think of the concept of nuclear infrastructure, all the things that you need to do from a regulatory perspective, building that awareness is important, for stakeholder engagement, for public support, all those things, but also for human resources development, to get people excited to come into the field. Because if you don't do that, you're never going to be able to embrace it as a country with your people. I was involved in the financing for the nuclear projects in the UAE. And, one of the things they did was they did a lot of stakeholder engagement. And you'd say, well, the UAE is not exactly a democracy. Once the sheikh decides, let's go, you go. But what they realized was that in order to get the best and the brightest of the Emiratis to come into the nuclear program, they had to start at all levels of the educational system to get people to want to go into that instead of things like oil and gas, because that's where all the talent would go. So that's just as an aside, but specific to Africa, I would just note that the U.S. Department of Energy is doing a 24-part series. I'm teaching with a colleague where every 2 weeks we teach on a subject of nuclear infrastructure development, and it's open to all African countries. And it's aligned with Ghana, where it was announced that Ghana is going to be establishing a clean energy training center. So that kind of ties a little bit into some of the things that you're saying, where, I think when you look at places like Africa, it's really hard to get stuff done. I mean, I'm being the master of the obvious here. And when you think of nuclear, where that's hard in its own right, and then you put it together with trying to get things done in Africa in a major way, it takes time, and I think that doing a lot of early stage engagement and investment is very important to build the knowledge base and build the support.
Or a roadmap, maybe.
And a roadmap.
A roadmap.
Of course, because I think one of the things, and again, I haven't gotten to Cross River yet, but I think the foundation's important, is one of the things that I've seen in my career is that a lot of these countries don't invest the money early on to set themselves off on the right direction. And if you're a country that's never done major infrastructure in something like nuclear, if you try and figure it out yourself, it doesn't mean that your people don't work hard. It doesn't mean that they're not intelligent, but there's a difference between intelligence and experience. And if you don't bring in the experience, you're going to keep stumbling. And, I've done a lot of work specifically with Ghana, and I was asked by the IAEA to review some work that they had done. And it was clear that they spent a lot of time and worked very hard on it, and they didn't get it right at all. Then I was brought in with some colleagues, and we worked with them, very open, very receptive to learning. But that difference of having people that have done it before is really important. The problem is those people cost money. And it's very hard when you're looking at something like a nuclear program where the actual result might not happen for 10, 15, 20 years, to spend money early on when budgets are tight. And so to get that external expertise, going back to the UAE, they made a decision in 2007. They started writing checks. They brought in the best and the brightest. They moved quickly. Not everybody can do what the UAE did. And so I think that's all part of it. So how does this all relate to Cross River and why we talk? Well, Cross River, we're a developer, and we develop technology-driven projects across the clean energy space. And so when you look at what we're doing, I'll just talk very, very briefly. we're based in the United States, but the project that we have right now, one of our projects is up in Canada at the Port of Belledune, where it's a phased development where we look at nuclear as a tool. So we're not looking to put nuclear on the grid, just because anybody can do that. What we're looking to do is focus on the applications of what nuclear can do. And so for us, it's a phased development really to produce hydrogen and ammonia. And so the first phase, we're taking available renewable power, because for us, it all has to be clean. And we're sort of getting things going to produce hydrogen ammonia in phase one with renewable power that is either available or to be developed. And that's important, again, because when you think of the gestation period of a nuclear project, if you say, oh, we're not going to be producing nuclear power from the first unit until 2031, that seems far away to people. For people in the nuclear business, that's right around the corner. And just the differences in mentalities and approaches, and especially for policymakers who like to show up and cut red tape and have pictures with shovels and hard hats in an empty field, 2031 is too far away. And so that hydrogen, that first phase is important for us. The second phase, and why nuclear, is because then we really scale. Because renewables are nice, they have a place, but you're never going to get the scaling factors with intermittent generation for the things we want to do to support the hydrogen economy. And so for us, that'll happen later. But what we're seeing already is as this project is going forward, people are saying, I want that too. And we're already signing MOUs with places outside of North America. And the interesting thing about the technology we've chosen, which becomes relevant, I think, to discussions about the developing world, is ARC clean technology. So ARC is an advanced reactor. And the reason we picked it is because the high heat factor. So when you get that heat off of the reactor, to produce hydrogen or ammonia or to desalinate water, you need electricity and you need heat. And if you're trying to create a clean product, and if you don't do it with clean inputs, then you solve one problem only to create another. And so for us, we look at it and say we get greater efficiencies from the electrolyzers because of the high heat factor. Well, that heat can also desalinate water. Mm-hmm. The other thing about the reactor design is it can do medical isotopes. And so I actually, if you'll bear with me for a second, because I have the list here of what we can do as I was thinking, I was just pulling stuff together. But when you look at the isotopes that we can produce from our reactor, if I can expand my screen, lutetium-177, copper-67, actinium-225, yttrium-90, iodine-131, cobalt-60, iridium-192, lead-212, radium-223. A lot of this stuff can be used for everything across the medical space. And so I think when you look at the products that we can produce, you see these projects that could be developed that hit electricity, isotopes, water production. Ammonia can be used for fertilizer. And then of course the jobs and the economics, because these projects are multi-billion-dollar projects.